This countdown's getting serious. Less than 2 weeks away from the 2021 NFL Draft. We are the best way to start your morning to get to know these young prospects. We'll analyze them. We'll introduce you to them personally right here at the virtual breakfast table. My name's Kay Adams. Welcome. Kyle Brandt, Peter Schrager is here, and Sean O'Hara messing with the feng shui once more.
Doing it again.
Yeah. But in a hoodie this time. Look at you, casual Friday.
Change it up a little bit.
Sean, how's
trying to keep up with cool Kyle over there?
How's it feel going from the Kyle role to the Nate role in one day? What's it feel like in that seat?
A little calm.
That
chair over there, I tell you, something about the lights, man. You just feel like you get zapped.
Bond ejector seats. Get ready.
Shock value just goes through the roof.
We have so much to talk about. Great show, great guests, great discussions, and all starts right here with this lead block.
Lead block.
Yep, let's do it, guys. Let's start up in Foxborough, where Bill Belichick spoke to the media yesterday. He was, of course, asked about this year's quarterback class. And, hey, Bill, would you consider trading up that we've been talking about for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week here at the breakfast table? And he gave a typical Bill Belichick answer.
It's an interesting class. It's an interesting group of guys, and some have very strong in some skills. Some seem very strong in other skills. So it's definitely an interesting group. There could very well be a player there that either you don't expect to be there, or maybe he is a couple spots, maybe at 12, 13, he's still on the board, and you really thought that he'd be gone in the top 6, 7 picks. And then then the question comes, do you move up and try to get that player that's fallen a little bit?
Okay, got it.
An interesting draft class. There's some quarterbacks that are good at some skills and other quarterbacks that are good at other skills. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for not telling us anything so we can keep chewing on this for the next 13 days. You heard what he had to say, what he didn't say by saying anything. He was like filibustering 4-minute answers. Gotta love Bill Belichick. Sean, would you be surprised if the Patriots did move up or take a quarterback where it falls to them at 15? I mean, when you're at 15, you're definitely in striking distance to move up and take a quarterback.
Yeah, well, listen, Kay, to quote Cousin Eddie, I wouldn't be more surprised if I woke up with my head sewn to the carpet.
I love it.
If the Patriots took a quarterback, Kay, we just heard Bill Belichick talking about all these different quarterbacks, and this one does this one well. I mean, he could be talking about Tom Brady and Cam Newton for all we know. But when you just look at the history of the Patriots, the last time they drafted a quarterback in the first round, Drew Bledsoe 28 years ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, absolutely. I'm waking up with drool on the carpet and I'm stuck to it like Cousin Eddie. It's because of that right there. It's just not something that they've done. It's not what they do.
Look at that shirt.
But they said they want to switch it up.
Look at Mr. Tagliabue. Yeah. The hats and the wardrobes have definitely changed, although that looks like it could have been a shirt that Schrager rocked just last week. I think when you look at the Patriots, there's so much talent and so much need that they have offensively. There's a lot of great receivers. I would be shocked to see them go with a quarterback in that first round.
Snots, you roll over and let Uncle Clark scratch your belly. You ain't never seen a sit on a dog like this one, Clark. They're going to need one, too, for the Patriots. Because I'll go further, Sean. You just talked about the team, how long they've been since they've drafted one in the first round. I did the deep dive here. Has Bill Belichick ever even been on a coaching staff that has taken a first-round quarterback, ever, in any capacity?
Going back to Cleveland?
Sure, because, they've had Brady, so they wouldn't take one. Go back to the Browns. Go back to the Giants. There's only one time. In 1979, in his first year with the New York Giants, when he was the special teams coach, they took the 7th overall pick out of Morehead State, who wanted to be a Super Bowl MVP, Phil Simms. In the 70s. We're talking the 1970s. That's how long it's been. So it's not what he does. Of course. It's not what he does. However, I've reached the point where I'm going to be surprised if they don't do it. I think they're going to do it because there's a name that I think is under-talked about in this conversation. It's the name Josh McDaniels. It is my belief, my intuition, based on what happened, that Josh McDaniels walked away from the Indianapolis Colts job where he was going to coach Andrew Luck before we knew it was coming, and he was going to do that. He came back to be new. I've always thought he's the heir apparent. I think when Belichick leaves, McDaniels will take over. I think McDaniels will have strong convictions in who they take in this draft. I think he wants a quarterback. And Belichick never drafts one, you better believe Josh McDaniels has gone and gotten a quarterback, one that might even be a little bit crazy. Let's go back to 2010. There was a palpable buzz at the draft because the Josh McDaniels coach Broncos were about to do something nuts in the first round.
And let's hear the words that few people thought would ever be heard on the first night of an NFL draft.
Baltimore has traded the 25th pick to Denver. And with the 25th pick, in the 2010 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Tim Tebow, quarterback, Florida.
One of the most memorable first-round picks in NFL history. They went up and get him. It didn't work out fine, but McDaniel said, that's my guy. If he will move up in the first round to draft Tim Tebow, do you think he's afraid of Justin Fields or Trey Lance? I do not. And I think his voice is underheard, underrepresented. I think he will have a say in this thing. And at this point, shock scale 1 to 10, it would be a 4 for me if the Patriots drafted a quarterback. I think they're getting one. I do.
I love it. I almost miss the Radio City days. We talk about these
cool,
giant
right?
events, but like it was such like a tight, like, oh,
it was home.
The reaction. It
Intimate.
did feel like home. Maybe we'll go back to Radio City one day. But
6th Ave, crazy traffic. I love it.
Unbelievable. Avenue of America's alive. But let's go and look at this quote one more time as the text is presented that we heard from Belichick. I'm going to bring up the. Here's what he said, guys. And look at it. I'd say normally something would happen, and there could very well be a player there that either you don't expect to be there, maybe he is a couple spots, maybe at 12 or 13, still on the board, you thought he'd be gone, top 6, top 7. Then the question comes, do you move up and try to get him a little bit? He wasn't talking specifically about quarterbacks when he asked that. They asked about just trading up in general. To me, that's not necessarily Justin Fields or Trey Lance. To me, that's, gosh, if one of those Alabama wide receivers is sitting there and I'm at 15 and I want to move up, I look at a guy like Jalen Waddle, I look at a guy like Devontae Smith, and I'm like, that could be what he's talking about, where it's not this giant leap to 4 or to 5 with the Bengals. It's, all right, let's go up to 12 or to 13, and maybe let's get this great #1 wide receiver that we have been missing.
Really?
Yeah, I think it might be. Julian Edelman retired. As much as we want to talk about Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne, neither one of those guys is still #1. N'Keal Harry's coming, but...
You put a lot of faith in Cam there to load him up.
Yeah, but at the very least, if it's Cam or not in the future, it's like... You now have Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith, and I think those two guys, those two Alabama wide receivers, because I think of Nick Saban and Belichick's connection, and I'm like, all right, if Justin Fields is there, maybe I don't know. I don't know if they would do that to go all in to move up to get a quarterback.
Right.
But wide receiver is a lot more easy on the stomach. It's a lot more digestible for Belichick to say, okay, here's a 3rd round pick. Let me move up 2 or 3 spots. Let me get this guy who can be our #1 wide receiver. I think after this offseason with the free agents, anything is on the table. Quarterback, wide receiver included.
The question, Triggs, is does Bill like any of these quarterbacks? And Josh McDaniels, sure. Matt Patricia's part of the process now. Of course, he's back on staff. It's Bill. Does Bill like any of these guys? Whether one of them falls to him if he trades up to get one. You guys are all married in your dating days.
Sure.
Do you ever remember being on a date and saying, interesting? That's interesting. He says interesting, like literally 4 times in 10 seconds. Not great, not talented. And when he uses the word interesting to describe this quarterback class, I have a little hesitation thinking he likes any of these guys. And he might not, and he might go ahead and get himself a skill position, not plan for the future, punt it, and just try to win the division somehow with Cam Newton under center in 2021, Trey.
Absolutely. What I find
interesting is a terrible word to describe something you might be moving up to.
Oh, God, it's the
buy.
worst. Really? You're in Barry's boot camp? Interesting. Can I get another drink over here, please?
She was fun. She had
Barry,
great
you're
personality.
interesting.
Yeah.
Terrible thing to say.
Peter, we hear every single year about Belichick and Saban. Belichick, they're best friends. I don't see Belichick's rostered laden with Crimson Tide players.
No,
Isn't it one of these things that's a little overhyped this time of year?
You're right, and that's a fair thing. And he also is usually drafting at the end of the 1st round in the 28s and the 29s and the 30s, and Saban's top players are not available. So in a couple of years, he went with the Georgia guy, and that was Isaiah Wynn, and that was Sony Michel, and those guys were Kirby Smart coach players who were Nick Saban guys. So it's like there is a whole pipeline with all these different colleges that Saban trusts. And I look at that, or Belichick trusts, I look at that Belichick to Saban pipeline. And if one of those top wide receivers who, from all accounts, from what I'm talking to, these guys, Jamar Chase is probably #1, but there is no one who has a negative word to say about those 2 Alabama wide receivers. They're going to go high. I wonder if that's who he jumps up a couple picks for.
If he jumps up to take a quarterback, do you see the quarterback? Do you see the heir to the Patriots throne?
Like, do I see a vision of that person?
Who's the person? No? Just one of the 3 that'll fall to him?
I think it's Fields.
Yeah?
I see Fields. I do. I really do. Because, look, the wide receiver thing is exciting and everything, but Peter, you've talked about this as much as anybody. Cam Newton couldn't throw the ball last year.
Yeah.
So we're going to get Devontae Smith to go 40 yards downfield so we can stop and wait for it. Who's throwing it to him? I think it's Fields. I love Fields.
I think Schrager is laying the groundwork for the Jimmy Garoppolo trade that's going to happen. They're going to have their quarterback, and then they're going to have an Alabama wide receiver. Patriots win the Super Bowl!
Okay, to piggyback on your interesting quote, a guy that could fit that interesting date is Kyle Trask. He's very...
That would be very interesting.
There you go.
15?
And look, the interesting thing, Schrager,